I am here with the legendary Ben Fong-Torres, who has a story that you will not believe. And Ben, I am so honored to be here with you.
Oh, thank you.
And I'm looking forward to catching up.
All right, fine. Let's catch it up.
And I know that you're not shy about your age. 50? I like to say 50 forever. 50 forever.
I punked you. I punked the CJ.
We'll go with that. That's
good.
No,
I'm actually 68, born in 45. Which would have come out anyway, because if you were asking me what I was doing as a kid listening to radio, then I would have said, well, I was 10 years old in 1955.
We're just doing the math.
That kind of thing, yeah. So you would have done it, yeah. Anyway, so.
I would have, and I would have done it right now.
I'm 68.
I love it. And looking good.
Thank you.
All right, so let's take you back to way back.
Okay.
Let's start with the radio.
The radio. Yeah. Well, here's the deal.
What was the first thing?
Our family were pretty much raised in our family restaurant on Webster Street in Chinatown, Oakland. And as soon as we could, we did chores. So after school, we were pretty much living in the restaurant. And with that kind of a life, from the age of 0 to 10, I was at the New Eastern Cafe most of the time. And so radio was my main escape into America, basically. Because we were in Chinatown, we lived in Chinatown, we went to Chinese school, we went to Lincoln School in Chinatown.
Were your parents immigrants?
Yes, they were. Okay. So they ran a restaurant, and so radio was it. And I heard the beginnings of rock and roll. But before that, you know, my first conscious memory about radio would be, Eddie Fisher, Patti Page, Tony Bennett, the Ames Brothers, and you, and who else? Perry Como, and No Other Love, and later on the Burgermeister Jukebox Parade, the Lucky Logger Dance Time, baseball, the Oakland Oaks, the San Francisco Seals, and so radio was it for me. I just clung to it, basically. It was always on in the rice room, the back room, where we were all kept doing homework, chores, whatever, or just hanging out while our parents worked.
Right.
So that was the first instance of radio, and I just absolutely fell in love with it. When rock and roll came along, and Elvis and Little Richard, I mean, I was just there for the ride. And then in Texas, my father went to Texas for a restaurant venture when I was about 12 or 13. And once again, I was in this horrible bungalow where the cooks and I had to live. And so there was a radio, and that once again was my salvation. And
so only outlet.
That's where I really got into radio and knew about the disc jockeys and the top 40 surveys and all that kind of stuff, and brought that back home to Oakland a year later. And that was it. I just thought if I could, there were no role models for me as a Chinese American in the late 50s, but I just thought if I ever could, that would be what I would love to do, to be on the radio, either doing baseball games or being a disc jockey or being one of the singers. You know, the music was pretty cool too. So that kind of formed my set of goals until I think I began to also love reading and writing. The other thing you could do at a restaurant while between chores and school. And so I began to think about writing as well. And that kind of led me to where I am now.
Well, when you were in high school, how did you apply yourself there with all those loves, with the passion for reading and writing and radio? Yeah,
high school was still a lot of work. We were the main employees of our family restaurant now in Hayward. And so we not only had to work after school every day, we had to ride the AZ Transit and get there and then drive home and all that stuff. But yes, in high school, I had begun to DJ dances. I could never go to dances because of obligations, but I carried records and a little turntable, maybe two, and played music for the kids.
How did you sell yourself for that? Or did you just volunteer and they said, oh, that sounds
cool? They
cool?
sort of knew I was a big mouth idiot who liked to tell jokes and talked about radio constantly. And so they said, yeah, Ben can be the DJ, he can be the MC, he can do this and that. And then in school, I ran for the office of Commissioner of Assemblies, which was the guy who planned and also hosted or emceed or whatever the weekly assemblies. And I would call my favorite radio station, KEWB in Oakland, and say, would you come as a guest for my assembly? And so I had Michael Jackson, the British Michael Jackson, talk show pioneer, and a couple of other DJs. And that also allowed me to do a monologue at the beginning of each assembly, a la Jack Parr or Johnny Carson or Steve Allen, other idols of mine. And so I was able to tell jokes and set up the program and MC certain ones or bring on other DJs to be a guest star of a show. So that kind of gave me the encouragement that I could do this kind of stuff, that I was not nervous in front of an audience, or if I was, it was healthy. You know, I got into telling jokes, constructing humor, and moved on from there into college.
You had a lot of confidence. And so now you're developing your confidence and all your skills in the field you love. What were your parents saying about this?
They knew nothing about it.
Oh.
Yeah, there was not exactly, well, there was a communication gap. They spoke only Chinese, Cantonese, and a specific dialect of it. My mom had gone to night school and taken citizenship classes, tried to learn English, but, you know, by day she was working a sewing factory, by evening she was by my father's side as sort of a sous chef, I suppose, an assistant cook at the various family restaurants, and if not that, she was raising ultimately 5 kids. She had her hands full and couldn't really learn much aside from watching I Love Lucy, you know, or December Bride. And so she could learn things like, Lucy, honey, I'm home. So she understood that. But, and of course, my father's adopted name was Ricardo, so that helped. See, she could say Ricky. Yeah. Huh? What? Yeah. Anyway, so they didn't really know what the kids were up to, none of us. So we just pursued, you know, they would have liked us to be white collar and be a lawyer or a doctor, and so they had no idea that I was aiming myself into media work of some sort, or music or whatever. And all through the years at Rolling Stone, they had no clue. You know, the occasional friend who had a kid who read Rolling Stone would say, "Did you know that your son is actually writing and working for this magazine in San Francisco?" They had no idea.
Well, let me take you back. So we got you up to college here. So how did college prepare you for the next phase?
Well, in college...
And where did you go to school?
SF State, San Francisco State College.
Yes, love it.
And I chose it partly because I learned that they had an on-campus radio station. I did not know that it reached nobody. I did not know it was a telephone circuit line to the dorms, of which there were 2, and that someone had to have a special closed-circuit telephone thing in their room. They would have to dial in 88 and know that we were on at, you know, from 6 to 9 or whatever. So I got a shift once a week, and so started playing radio on that level. And at the same time, I kind of bided my time with the school paper, the Daily Gator, the Golden Gator. And I kept my grade point average up to above a B, so that I could then waste the next 2 years writing for the school paper and running around and like that. So
and were you still working at the restaurant then?
Yes, and on weekends and certain nights I would still drive from San Francisco to Hayward to work at the restaurant.
Oh my goodness.
And so, yeah, that's right, because I didn't live in San Francisco. On Tuesday nights I would stay on campus, sneak into the men's dorm, and then my friends would put me in what they call the gym room, where they put all the exercise equipment, and I would set up a little army cot because it was foldable and hideable,
oh my goodness,
and sleep there and wake up at 5:30 or whatever in the morning on a Wednesday, and it was time to go on the wild side. Radio 88 sounds great. KRTG, San Francisco State, you know.
You were on the radio though. This was your dream.
On the radio. And I'm still running into various former engineers who remember sitting across from me and playing the records while I did my inane chatter.
I love it. So then you're multimedia now. You're on the Gator, and you're on the radio.
Yep.
And you're still working at the restaurant, and you're commuting, and you got 4 brothers and sisters, and parents who know nothing.
Yeah, that was the life, pretty much. And it worked out for me because, as obviously, I went on to Rolling Stone magazine, which is
How did you get the job,
cool
though?
paper.
That is very cool.
Oh God, I don't remember the name. But what it was that for Rolling Stone, my roommates and I were all involved in media and music. We all loved it and worked in it already as post-college graduates. And we read Rolling Stone constantly. We passed it around, and then like some drug, and which it was really. So. One day, one of my roommates said, "Hey, there's a concert going on just down the block on Divisadero or Steiner Street. And it's got a band called Siegel Schwall from Chicago. And what they're doing is a free concert to promote this film called about the Haight-Ashbury by Dick Clark. And boing, the antenna went up. Oh, Dick Clark, bandstand, doing a hippie movie. This is a story. I wonder if Rolling Stone knows about it. So I looked up the phone number and called. Oh, no, we don't know about it. Can you do a little report for us on it? So it was my first little thing was like a random note. Only they called them flashes back then, of course. And so I got in. And soon after that,
Wait, how old were you when you did this?
I was definitely, I was after college, 1968.
But still.
So I was 23.
Still, that's huge.
Yeah, it broke in, you got in the door. And so then KMPX was going on, the first free-form hippie progressive rock station. And they went on strike. So I called Rolling Stone and said, hey, KMPX is on strike. The Chronicle's calling it the first long-hair hippie strike. And do you need any help covering it? And so they said, yeah, why don't you go down and help the guy, our main reporter. By this time, I had gotten on to San Francisco radio myself, but not exactly on KMPX. I was on KFOG, which at that time was playing beautiful music out of Ghirardelli Square, Kaiser Broadcasting, and I had the all-night shift playing these reel-to-reel tapes of Dolly Madison hosting, no, Dolly Holiday, that's it. She called herself Dolly Holiday. For Holiday Inns, and they hosted, or they sponsored this 6-hour swath of beautiful music, and I was just there to run the tapes. For 6 hours, I broke in twice an hour to read headlines or weather or do a PSA or whatever, but hey, I was on San Francisco radio, and I didn't care that from 8 till 11, I was at the Fillmore or the Avalon getting freaky and having a great time, and then getting my little Ford Falcon or Toyota or whatever, driving down to Ghirardelli Square to play And Now Mantovani here on KFOG 104.5, music for the good life.
Got the pipes for it.
And so I did that for about 6 months. So when the strike occurred at KMPX, I told Rolling Stone I had experience on FM radio in San Francisco. So, all right, get down there and help out this guy. And that guy, the main correspondent, was fired or quit soon after that strike began. So I took over the story. Wound up writing about 5 pieces about the strike. And so that was my total entree into Rolling Stone. And they had an opening, and a guy who preceded me at SF State at the Gator was serving as managing editor, John Burks. And he's, oh, I know a guy who could do this. He loves music, and he knows about radio. He knows the rock scene. He is a good editor and writer. He just came out of the Gator thing, so let's bring him in. Plus, he's been writing some freelance pieces for us already. He's ready. Let's go. So I got hired by Jan Winter over lunch at Blanche's Seafood Restaurant on the pier, on the waterfront. And he offered me a great pay cut from what I was making. I had a job at that time at the phone company for the Employee magazine, which paid about maybe $700 a month. And Jan said, "I'll give you $450."
How exciting!
And a desk. I said, "Hey, I'm on.
Dream. It was the dream.
I'm there."
Yeah.
I mean, I had just been given a tour of the Pacific Telephone building where they were looking at me and saying, "Young man, you know, stick with us, and one of these days you can have one of these watches I'm wearing right now from 20 years of devoted service." F you. I'm out of here. So when Jan Winter, sorry about that.
We do love the phone company.
Yeah, we do. But no, I was given a choice between joining Rolling Stone and staying at the phone company.
You had to go with the dream.
Went with the dream, and it worked out all right. And in the midst of Rolling Stone, within a year or two, in 1969 was when Paul Boucher, who was then the program director of KSAN, which was the station that kind of took over after the strike fizzled, and some of the staff of KMPX went and formed KSAN, the Jive 95, which had been a classical station, saved Stefan Ponick, who did an underground show on the all-night shift. They somehow let him do that. He was on weekends only. Anyway, they had gotten going at KSAN, and they had become the major rock station in town, even beating out KFRC on occasion. And one day, Paul Boucher, the program director, called and me at Rolling Stone and said, "Hey, I got a random note for you, I hope. We're doing this weird. Tom Donahue has been signed by Warner Brothers to do a movie. He's calling it Medicine Ball Caravan. It's a bus load of hippies and rockers, and they're going to just caravan across the country and stop and play free concerts for people."
Okay.
And he's taking along with him, though, a couple of our weekend disc jockeys. And so I have a couple of openings to fill, and I'm wondering if, and he's talking to me on the phone, so he knows what I sound like, and he knows I'm at Rolling Stone. So he says, "Do you think you might have time to fill in for August of 1970 and be a disc jockey?" I said, "Man, I am there." So they had me ready to go, and in July one day, Boucher or somebody calls me and says, "Ben, can you come over right away and do a show? Because we're doing our Christmas card photo shoot up in Mount Tam, or somewhere in Marin County, and the whole gang is leaving. And so if you come over, I'll teach you the ropes. And we have a Kelly girl up front to answer the phone." And so that was my first time on KSAN. Was completely by myself, not knowing what's going on. 3 turntables, there's the board, there's the FCC.
You had to run the board yourself?
Yeah, you had to do the readings every hour for the FCC, and there's the phone, and these are the cart machines, and this is the log, and you got to, write down what you're going to be playing, all this stuff. Bye! And off they went, and there was,
that was it?
Kelly girl and me. So we did it for about a 3-hour show, and then the following month I did, I guess, 4 or 5 shows on weekends. And then, of course, what happened was several of the weekend DJs never returned to San Francisco.
Oh, dear.
They were in Peru, they were in the Himalayas, they were in Paris, whatever. And so I wound up filling in and doing weekends for the next 10 years. That's what happens when you say yes to a little temp fill-in gig at KSAN.
But you loved it.
I absolutely loved it.
It's everything you wanted.
Yeah. And what I was able to do at KSAN was that, let's say Stevie Wonder is in town, and I'm doing a profile of him, covering a concert, whatever, and then I just say, "Hey, Stevie, Sunday, if you're not doing too much, come on down to, I do a radio show." And he says, "Oh, okay. You can be guest DJ. You can pick the music." All right. And so he shows up with his assistant, and we have Stevie Wonder on. Steve Martin is an opening act at the boarding house. He's playing with the Nitty Gritty Dirt Band and Linda Ronstadt. And I loved Steve. From the very beginning, he was so weird and twisted. So I approached him and said, "Radio, I do a little show on Sunday." "Oh, okay, I'll be there." And he comes in and does his act, which is at that time, a lot of visual humor. Right. The arrow through the head, and where he walks around and says, "Well, it's good to be here." And he walks away and says, "Well, actually, it's kind of good to be here." And then he walks away to the other side of the stage. "Well, actually, I've changed my mind. It's good to be here." And he would do that on the radio. But we became friends, and that was the element that I could bring to it, was the guests. And sometimes I might get an advance copy of a record, maybe even before KSAN. Mm-hmm. Be able to play the latest from Boss Skaggs or Bob Dylan or the band or whatever, reggae music, and it was completely free form. And so I was spoiled by KSAN badly, and it was very hard to follow up with that job with any other, because there was nothing like it.
Well, it was everything that you wanted to do. There were no censors, no controls.
No. Well, yeah, there was censorship. You couldn't say certain things.
But in terms of programming, you can do what you wanted to do.
Oh, absolutely. And on occasion, there would be a phone call at 11 o'clock or so from a certain all-night disc jockey who would just say, "Hey, Ben, I can't make it, man." Okay. I can't make it, man. "Oh, all right. You're incapacitated. You are you are in need of someone to do the next 6 hours on the radio for you, right?" "Yeah. Thanks, man. I owe you." So then I'd pop into KSAN, and this is after a day at Rolling Stone or being on the road or whatever, editing and writing, and then you show up at KSAN. But there, for the all-night shift, you are completely carte blanche, whereas before you're free. But here, now, I can play, if I want to, I can play jazz and move that into Cheech and Chong, and from there come out with some Motown, and then swing over to some local artist who I'm digging, back to Aaron Neville and some New Orleans music, the Fats Domino, and then back to jazz, or blues, whatever you want to do. Throw in some B.B. and Albert King too. Oh, and some Carole King, and then why not the King Sisters? Whatever came to your head that you could find and make work sonically was okay. But that was the all-night shift, On my regular show on Sunday afternoons, I tended more toward like the mainstream, but with lots of surprises.
Wow, how exciting. All right, before we run out of time, I want to talk about Rolling Stone and what you're doing now. Best moments and worst moments.
Yeah. The best moments at Rolling Stone were clearly being at concerts and being there to interview and to learn about many major figures.
The biggest.
A virtual Rock Hall of Fame. And getting to know some of these people and learning about how success and failure impact people, sometimes in much the same way. And because of that time frame, having so much access to them, these days everything is controlled in terms of interviews. And those days, you just were on the bus or on the plane or in the room or at the party with them. You saw them doing all the bad and good things that they might do, and they kind of trusted that you would be okay with it and not betray them. And when they spoke to you, there were a couple of times when they said, "Man, I feel like I should be paying you for this session," because it was like psychotherapy, because you're digging deep into what it is that made them search for the direction that they got into. It's kind of like what you're doing to me right now, actually. That's Dr.
Right.
Jennings.
Dig deep.
And so, but that was so rare, because now you have a PR person saying, don't talk, you shouldn't ask that question.
Right.
And back then, they weren't even in the room. That was like a set rule for us at Rolling Stone. Just leave us be, and we will take care of our business, and you'll get a story, and you'll be okay.
Were you ever tempted to betray because it was just what they were doing was so awful?
Well, you could hint at it. You could just say that there was a party going on, and that there were really not too many worst moments at Rolling Stone. It was such a great ride, There was pressure because, unlike most national magazines, Jan decided, let's put out 2 a month instead of 1. Every other week, let's put them. So there was a very difficult deadline to meet all the time, and we didn't have. And here we're still generating these 5,000 to 10,000 word feature pieces, and I'm running the music section and on the road and chasing, but also helping to discover great writers like Michael Gilmore and Cameron Crowe and a number of others from around the world and around the country. So that was really rewarding.
Worst moments?
Yeah, there were no real worst moments, except you would write a story and you learned that the person who you wrote about was really deeply hurt by it because of a comment. And one of them that I think about was Dobie Gray, who had, rock and roll, Drift Away. Give me that beat, Lord, Save My Soul. Anyway, big hit record. He performed at the boarding house. I watched it, and I just felt a detachment from the crowd and him. He didn't quite click that night. And I said it in print. And I should have thought, not everybody clicks every night, right? I should have given him a little bit more leeway there and focus more on the positive nature of the act, his voice, and the song that he chose. That was such a perfect fit for him, and such a great song that has obviously lived on. And instead I dwelled a little too much, in his view, on negative. But that's the way it was with a lot of artists. You could say generous, nice, complimentary, objective things about them, all true, but that one sentence where you say something about how they fell short, or that rubbed you wrong, or she said that with a smirk, anything that they felt was negative, that's all they think about. They have their manager go, "Now, why did you have to say that about her?" That kind of a thing. So
but you're not their PR person.
Yeah.
You're the critic.
Right.
Yeah.
So that's part of the gig, but you just have to say, "Oh, hey, I'm not. That's not my job to make everybody happy, especially the subject."
But it is tough.
Yeah.
Now, you've got a book coming out.
Well, yeah, it's like my 9th book, I think. And this one is about Little Feat, a under the radar 70s band that was led by a genius of a singer-songwriter, Lowell George, who, as was the case with so many people of that time, died too young. And so he passed away in 1978. But the band, after a hiatus, regrouped and carries on. They're still around. They're on a hiatus right now, but they have continued to tour. And because of the internet, they've built up a tremendous fan base globally. And so the one thing that they didn't have was a book about them. And I found out why. Boy, that was a tough book to write, to research, and to finish. And so I'm happy that it is done. It'll be out November of 2013. And I've moved on to an app and site that allows folks to stream from a couple thousand music videos, documentaries, concert films, all kinds of stuff. And I write reviews and blogs and watch over the content for that. Then for Radio Jones, I am on Boss Radio alongside, of all people, Terry McGovern and Rachel Donahue. We kind of take Sunday mornings and go from 5, I guess, all the way till I'm finished at 4. So I have Sundays 1 to 4, pretty close to the time frame of KSAN back in the old days. Only now it's voice tracking. I do it at home. It's a pre-programmed list of music. I can complain and say, "Oh no, I don't want the average white band here. I'd rather hear this and that," and put in my own music. And I have my own features, that kind of a thing. And I have my own announcer, Bobby Ocean, the fabled voice of Boss Radio, and he lives in San Rafael. So I said, "Bobby, I'm doing this thing for Boss Radio. Can you cut me some liners?" I wrote a few things for him, so he announces my features. So it is just a lot of fun, and that's why we do it in the end. And it's not for money or fame or recognition. It's just to have that music around you and be able to introduce it and to uncover something new or reveal a factoid or talk about what's going on in the world or in our community and make it sound like a piece of entertainment for 3 hours a week. So that's fun. I write about radio in the Chronicle. I have been for many years now, the Radio Waves column. And I also freelance for various magazines and zines and sites and whatever. So I do that for a variety of magazines, ranging from as big as Parade to as little as a neighborhood newspaper. Whatever comes along that's interesting to write about, and you have a place to write, you do it.
I don't even know how you have the energy to do all of this. You're amazing.
I don't have the energy.
That's because you love it. It's your passion.
Yeah.
And we're out of time.
Yes.
One more.
And finally,
yes.
Late in life, I've begun to sing in front of, or for, actually not for them, but they bear it. That's what it is. And I sing at senior centers, and I'm under the umbrella of Bread and Roses now on occasion. But I go out along with George Yamasaki on piano and Kurt Houget on guitar, and we do the songbook. Of all things, I'm singing Sinatra and Dean Martin and Vic Damone and Perry Como.
Well, before we leave, I think that you should sing us a song.
Yeah, I sure should. Right.
You can do it right now.
When the moon hits your eye like a big pizza pie, that's amore. When the world seems to shine like you had too much wine, that's amore. That kind of thing.
I love it. That's fantastic. Okay, now we'll just sign us out with your radio.
Thank you, Cheryl.
No, your radio sign out right here.
And that's it. Tune in. We'll have another edition of Interviews with Jocks in just a little while.